Hello and welcome to Storytime Reddit. Today's story comes from r/ProRevenge. We have 3 stories lined up. You take my promotion, I take your career. Second story, this one is hilarious. To all musicians, read your contracts and pay up or else. Third and final story, made my ex-boss lose approximately $25,000 on his salary. Background, I work in a niche field in the defense industry in that it requires a security clearance. For obvious reasons, I'll be vague about the job, but here's how the industry itself works. In my field, you're obligated to give 2 months' notice since handover of duties and responsibilities can take several weeks, and out-processing from an employer takes 2 weeks alone. In return, you typically get several months of severance in the event of a termination, as long as you're not being fired for a security violation. Likewise, if you are fired from a position, you are unlikely to ever get another job in that industry again, so everyone is generally very careful about meeting their metrics. And finally, promotions can take several months as the process involves several layers of review and adjudication. In short, everything in my field moves slowly, but the advantage is it gives you plenty of time to plan around. I had been working with my current employer for 3 years and was due for a raise and promotion. I was filling a mid-level position, but had been slowly assuming the responsibilities of the senior position above me. The previous senior had left, but the previous manager had dragged his feet on getting approval to fill the role. This was fine with me because I was gaining experience in the systems and processes of the senior role, which were huge resume boosters, and I may not have been eligible for the promotion otherwise. The promotion would essentially be a change in title and pay while I continued my current duties. At that time, a friend working at a competing company would reach out to me about once a month to offer me an equivalent senior role at his company. I would always tell him that I was grateful for the offer, but felt that I was already fast-tracking at my company and wanted to continue to build my career here. He told me I always had a standing offer. On to the story. A new manager, John, took over my department and was filled in on my plans to take the senior role when it became available a few months later. He immediately started going out of his way to set me up for failure and attempted to hand some of my duties over to a coworker in the department, even when the reasoning for it made no sense. I quickly learned that they were old golfing buddies, that my coworker had helped him get the manager position, and John was planning on returning the favor by giving him the senior position. I was on good terms with coworker, and he was the one to tell me what was happening behind the scenes. I was obviously frustrated and decided to give my friend a call and asked if his offer was still on the table. He immediately sent over a job offer, and by the end of the day, we started the onboarding process. The next morning, I approached John and asked him if we could have a conversation about my career plans. He laughed in my face and said he didn't have time for that. I told him it would only take a few minutes, and he laughed again and said he would try to make time for it the following week. He obviously thought I wanted to talk to him about the upcoming promotion and was trying to deflect the conversation. Now I was pissed. You want to play games? Okay, we can play games. I immediately sent him an email asking to reschedule a time, again stating that this was to discuss my place at the company and emphasizing that it would only take a few minutes. Naturally, the email went unanswered. Over the next several weeks, I continued to bring up the topic to him. Each time he would say that we'd have to push it back another week, getting more and more smug. I didn't push the issue and simply followed up with an email documenting each attempt. I could have simply handed him my notice, but if he wanted to tell me he didn't have 5 minutes to sit down and talk, who was I to tell him otherwise? Meanwhile, I continued the onboarding process for my next job. Coworker called me after hours to inform me that John had offered him the senior role and he was being onboarded for that position as well. It was obvious that he was waiting for coworker to officially move into the senior role before telling me in order to rug sweep my attempts at the promotion. Finally, I was due to have my annual review, which John could not avoid, although he did schedule it for Friday afternoon after everyone else had gone home. He started off the review by going over the objective metrics I had achieved. I had gone above and beyond the scope of my job, and based on my metrics, he was forced to rank me 1 out of 10 for employees in my position. When the review was complete, he said he wanted to give me his personal assessment of my performance, and proceeded to tear me apart. He said that metrics weren't everything, that he felt I did not have the potential to advance in the company, that I still needed to prove myself if I was serious about this job, and that we could develop a 2-year plan to prepare me for a senior role. He went on for several minutes about how incompetent I was, despite also acknowledging that I had been instrumental in the success of every project I had worked on, and closed out his remarks by saying, "Some people just aren't cut out for this type of job, but the good news is that I think I can work with you and get you to that point. But if you're not willing to work with me on that, then I don't think you have any future at this company. I was internally laughing, but kept my poker face and agreed with each of his points as he talked. Finally, he sat back in his chair, smirked, and said, "Now, what was it that you've been so eager to talk to me about all of this time?" "Well, as you know, I've been trying to sit down with you to have this conversation for the last 6 weeks. I've been trying to inform you that I took a job as senior role at competing company and have been onboarding with them. Given how long it's taken for you to schedule this meeting with me, my onboarding process is almost complete and my last day at this company will be 2 weeks from now. With that timeline in mind, today was my last day completing my daily functions, and I will start out processing on Monday morning." John sat speechless, and I let the silence fill the room. I planned on saying the bare minimum and letting him stew in his words. He shuffled through my review file needlessly before finally saying, "But I thought you wanted the senior position." "John, you just spent the last 20 minutes telling me I'm not getting that position." "But you have to give us 2 months' notice. This isn't enough time. I tried to inform you 6 weeks ago, but you said you didn't have time to sit down with me. I've reached out to you every week since then, and this has been my first opportunity to give you my notice." John said there for a few more seconds, his face changing from disbelief to anger before storming out of the conference room to his office. I grabbed my things and left to enjoy my weekend. Over the weekend, coworker called to ask me what was going on. Apparently, John had called him to inform that he would have to be prepared to fill the senior role with no training or handovers. Coworker knew that taking on the role without a handover was career suicide and wanted to know what's up since I was essentially filling that position. Apparently, John had spent the whole weekend trying to convince coworker to assume the risk of the promotion, which had set off red flags that John was prepared to throw coworker under the bus to save his own skin. I told coworker I was leaving the company, was immediately out processing, and good luck. Coworker laughed, told me he was happy to hear it was working out for me, and said he would have to reconsider taking the position if he was going to be set up for failure. On Monday morning, John told me that we had a meeting with the department head. As the meeting started, I realized that John had spent the weekend spinning a story about how I had quit without proper notice. The department head said they were considering legal action and wanted my side of the story. I simply told him that I had attempted to give notice 6 times, and each time John said he didn't have time for me. I showed him the emails and made sure to point out that I had only asked for a couple minutes of John's time, and noted how John never acknowledged any of the emails. I told him that I was only able to give notice because my annual review overlapped with my notice period, and that if I hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to give any notice. Finally, I asked him how I was supposed to give notice, let alone do my job, if my manager refused to talk to me for months. It was such a ridiculous question that the department head cut the meeting short and said they would not pursue legal action. Aftermath. I spent the next 2 weeks out processing as John shot me angry glares. He apparently thought that coworker would be angry at me for leaving them high and dry, but coworker made sure to ask me about outside career opportunities whenever John was in the room. I told coworker that I would try to hand off as much as I could in that time, but he told me he wasn't concerned about it. On my last day, I got to watch coworker also put in his 2 months' notice, just a few days before he was supposed to start his new role as senior role. Apparently, he had spent the last 2 weeks finding another job as well. Coworker told me that he had also thrown John under the bus during his exit interview with the department head, saying that he didn't appreciate how John was willing to undermine his employees to serve his own needs, and that although coworker had initially recommended John for the job, he could see now that it was a mistake and that he could not continue to work under that type of management. Without any type of continuity for the senior role, and after losing 2 candidates for the role in the span of a month, the department lost critical capabilities, was unable to fulfill most of its responsibilities, and struggled to find anyone willing to take a job on a sinking ship. John was fired a couple months later and left the industry for good. Well done. Did the manager or department head ever ask why you didn't give your notice by email to respect the 2-month timeline? OP. The unspoken agreement was that they wouldn't pursue legal action against me and I wouldn't expose John's preferential treatment and harassment outside the company. Essentially, give the company an opportunity to quietly clean house rather than air everyone's dirty laundry. I definitely played dirty, but if we had gone the legal route, it would have ended up worse for everyone involved. It's unusual that a beneficiary of nepotism is still friendly with someone who got screwed over. Given what your job sounds like, I imagine most rational people try to be on as good terms as possible with their colleagues. OP. I work in a dog-eat-dog industry. Everyone in this story was out to serve their own interests. Coworker was happy to help John until John turned on him. Then coworker was happy to help end John's career. Coworker and I have known each other for many years and had used back alley rumors to help each other plenty of times over the years. He was still ready to step on my back to take my promotion, but at least he did not feel the need to dig his heel in on the way up. You left John defenseless. Not a good look in the defense industry. Second up, this one is hilarious. To all musicians, read your contracts and pay up or else. I work in music production. I charge $125 per hour to edit, mix, master recordings from bands, which is about half the average rate. I had a band come to me, I mixed their album. It took me 10 hours. 10 times 125 equals $12.50. Well, at the end, they said, and I'm not even joking, but this is so ridiculous. Well, an hour only has 60 minutes in it, not 100, so your math is wrong and unfair. I was stunned because how can people in their 30s be this uneducated? I said, it doesn't matter how many minutes are in an hour, I charge by the hour, and you agreed to it. They had signed a contract. Well, they left and refused to pay. This was their debut album/EP, and little did they know, because they didn't read the damn contract, that I saved backups of all the work I did. And there was a clause that says my studio retains ownership of 100% of the music that I work on until I am paid and sign the rights back off to the band. Again, this is very boilerplate contract stuff in music industry. They had planned on selling their CD at concerts for $20 each. I released their music free online, every site I could find, and I also knew the venues they were playing at. So I made 1,500 CDs. Cost me like $200, but worth it for spite. And every gig they had, I would set up a booth with their CDs just outside of the property line of the venue and give their CDs away for free, acting like an agent of the band. One thing they also never planned on, I made the vocals on the CDs off-pitch with auto-tune. The band broke up about 6 months later after people stopped going to see them. I love absolutely legal revenge. Me and my two friends who helped me had a hell of a laugh. Like we were giddy all the time while this was going on. It was great. Pay up or get effed. At first I thought, the free CD giveaways might actually help them. But then I saw that you pitched the vocals out of tune. Diabolical. It was their time to face their music. OP. Yep. Totally deserved if you ask me. What kind of people just straight up refuse to pay somebody for their work? Happens to me, a freelance graphic designer, all of the effing time. People sign contracts, don't like it sometimes, and refuse to pay. They're usually the high maintenance ones that require many, many changes, and they still don't like it. Karens everywhere, wasting my time. Relatedly, there's a reason anybody in the wedding business has ironclad contracts on what services they're required to provide and exactly when payment is due, and how many changes can be made prior to delivery of services. And now for our last story, made my ex-boss lose $25,000 on his salary. I used to work at a Wendy's as a manager. It was already a crappy job, but my general manager was nice and most employees were easy to deal with. All this started when I was already working approximately 65 hours a week. I was offered a $100 bonus to work one of my only days off. I decided to do it, and later that week. Before I had even been paid, I was asked to come in again. I said this time I would like $150 at this point. I had worked almost 23 days without any days off. They said they'd do it, so in I went. Cut forward 3 weeks, I've been asking about my money for a while now. I am told by my general manager that I could speak to my district manager as he would be in later that night. The conversation goes like, "Hey, do you know what's going on with my bonus? I'm owed $250 with both the days." Well, that's why I came here. The store has been having trouble making money. So basically, he's telling me that my performance isn't good enough. At this point, I'm working dinner rush and the whole night with me and 3 others, my girlfriend, best friend, and another friend that has grown close. Your shift isn't making as much money as others, and your drive time is higher. Well, we're doing all we can. It takes extra time when we only have half the number of people with the same amount of customers. That's really no excuse. When am I going to receive my bonus? My district manager was a very sheepish man, Cece, so he's very obviously scared when he tells me this. We cannot give you a bonus until the revenue rises and drive time goes down. I am speechless at this point. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I grew up on the south side. You didn't mess with people's money. A day passes. I've had time to collect myself and speak to my entire crew. Everyone agrees to walk out with me. So I call my district manager. The phone starts to ring, but then it cuts off. He declined my call, so I called him again, and again, and again. Finally, I just leave him a voicemail. "Look, Jacob, you need to talk to me. You have until 8:45 to call me back or all of night crew is done." At this point, it's 7:30. I go into my office and start watching my boss's email. She leaves it open and logged in. I figured he would probably email her before calling me. Around 20 minutes of watching this email, and boom, an email pops up. Emergency, Lonnie. This idiot put my name on the email, so of course I read it. Long story short, in the email, it was him trying to make sure my general manager was going to be ready to go to work. AKA, he wasn't going to call me or give me my money. So I get all my people together, and we walk out, leaving everything out. All the meat, all the toppings, the fryer, everything. The next day, I turn in my keys. About a week later, I'm called by my brother. What's up? Jacob lost all of his stores. He has to go back to Indiana. My brother worked at the store as well. If you don't know, district managers' pay is based on the amount of stores they have and how much they make. When he moved to Indiana, his wages got reduced from $65,000 to around $40,000. All this for $250. Looks like Jacob doesn't know how to listen. You said in your voicemail all of Night Crew would be walking out, and it sounded like he thought he'd only have to send in your general manager to cover the shift. If he wasn't satisfied with the numbers that a shift manned by 4 people did, what the hell did he expect to do with a shift manned entirely by 1 person? What Jacob should have done was pay you what was promised out of his own pocket. Now he gets to not only enjoy going back to the middle of what sounds like bum F nowhere, but he gets to do with a pay cut. The fact you got an entire shift who liked your management style enough to put up with not having as many people staffing the joint to join you in a total walkout, which I imagine if they hadn't been willing, you wouldn't have screwed them that night by the sound of it. Jacob killed a golden goose and basically screwed himself. I do so love happy endings where the bad guy gets hosed by his own folly. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Jacob wouldn't even need to pay the bonus from his own pocket. It's the biggest lie that I have ever heard that a big firm like Wendy's doesn't have $250 to spare. This is just the good old tale of me, F everyone else, and how it doesn't work. OP. Oh, I didn't believe him for 1 second. But oh well, now I make $3 more an hour. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. I hope you'll come again soon. Bye for now!